Hey, hello everyone. In today's lecture, let's discuss about the various compute engines available in Databricks. That's the topic for today's lecture. So, folks who are working on Databricks might know that there are multiple compute options from which you can choose from. Now, what are the key considerations while selecting one of these or many of these, right? Is what we are going to discuss today. So, let's first start by understanding which are the compute options. The first one is your all purpose cluster, it which you use for running your notebooks. So, that's your all purpose cluster. Second, if you have worked on DLT, right, Delta Life Tables, it spins up its own cluster. So, that's another option. Third is the job cluster. So when you want to orchestrate all your notebooks and DLTs or SQL queries, you'll be creating the workflows, and to run them, you have an option to run execute them using a job cluster. So that's third, and the fourth and the last one is the Databricks SQL warehouse. Let's say the SQL warehouse where you can run your SQL queries. Now within these four, there are multiple options available as well. Like options as in you can select the size of the cluster, you can select whether you want to run the photon engine or not, you can select whether you want to auto scale these or not, or even the serverless option is available for some of these. Especially the SQL warehouse, there is a serverless option available, and I think for all others, you might soon see the serverless options uh, becoming available in your own in your regions wherever you are working on. So what these are the four options. Okay, now when to choose what? So basically, all-purpose cluster is for your interactive queries, right? When you are running few things in the development environment, you write your notebook. So generally, developers would do the coding in a notebook, and that is when they'll have to test it out. That time you can use all-purpose cluster. So all-purpose cluster can be shared across all the dev users. You can create a two-node cluster, three-node cluster, and then use it for all these purposes. So it's the best way for running the queries, and I mean when I say queries, it's the Spark notebooks. See the output, then again make the changes in the code. So for all the development activities, you can consider running it. But when you put this into production, right, when you have created a notebook, you are not going to run it interactively, right? That is where job cluster comes in. So you can use this for running your production notebooks. Okay, so you will have to create the workflows. In workflows, you can give the notebooks that you want to execute. You can create the dependencies. Let's say you have a notebook A and you have notebook B, and you want B to start only when A is successfully completed. You can do that in workflows. To run that, you can use job cluster. Now the good thing about job cluster is it will be active only till the time the job is running. Okay, active only till the time the job is running. As soon as the job completes, this will get terminated. That's not the case with all purpose cluster, right? All purpose cluster is something which will keep on running, keep on running. You will have to stop this. Okay, it's not, there's no auto stop feature. Yes, you can give the time, like if you want to stop it after 15 minutes idle time, it can do that. But then it's not a transient cluster type, where a job cluster will do the job and it will stop. Okay, and that is why it is broadly used in production environments. Now you can run workflows using all-purpose cluster also, even that is possible. But in production, use the job clusters. Okay, here also you can do the required configuration whatever you want. Um, then comes Delta Life Table. Now, Delta Life Table is the declarative ETL feature within Databricks. Those who have worked on it would know that it offers you multiple features such as data quality checks, event logging, incremental data processing, and a lot of other features come with DLT. So, what is the cluster that it uses? It will spin up its own cluster. So, when you create a DLT notebook, right, you can create it using Python or SQL, and you will have to create a DLT pipeline, right? You create a DLT pipeline. That is where you can specify the configuration for the DLT cluster. So this will cluster will also spin up and it will spin down, or it will get terminated like job cluster. Now here there are two options, right? If you see, there is a production option and there is a development option, right? When you create a DLT pipeline, these two options are there. If you create a product, if you use the production pipeline, it will stop immediately as soon as the job is complete. Okay, but if you use the development option, right, the cluster will keep on running. It won't stop. At least it runs for a couple of hours. Okay. After that, it will stop. Why it is so? So that you can do any debugging that you want to do. Okay. Else, what happens? The DLT takes some time, around 6 to 7 minutes to get started. So if you run something on a production pipeline in development, every time, right, the job is complete, you will have to wait for 6 to 7 minutes for it to get started again. So if you're doing any testing, debugging, I would say is go for the dev kind of an setting, so that the cluster is still running. And once you are done, you can stop that. Okay, but please ensure that you stop it, else you will incur a lot of cost. And in production, always use the production mode. Now there are other modes also, like continuous mode, trigger ones, uh, right, based on trigger and all. Those are separate, it's a separate topic to discuss. But yeah, coming back to the main thing, yes, DLT you can run using the DLT cluster. Now you cannot run this using all-purpose cluster like job cluster. Job cluster, the workflows have that option to run either by using a job cluster or all-purpose cluster. But for DLT, right, you will have to use the DLT cluster. There's no other option. Finally, the SQL warehouse. This is for you running your SQL queries. Okay, so mainly for data analysts who prefer writing queries using SQL instead of Spark, they can use this. Now here also there are t-shirt sizing kind of a cluster where you have 2x or two extra 2x small, large, and those kind of warehouses. Very similar to like the Snowflake cluster sizing. Um, but here there is also an option to run serverless. Okay, serverless option is there, so you can use that. Serverless is very fast. As soon as you start the query, it will immediately spin up and it will go away once the query is completed. Whereas the normal option, right, using this 2x and all, again the cluster will keep on running. You will have to give some auto stop for idle time and all. So if you don't want to do that, you can use serverless. Now a similar serverless feature is coming in the all others cluster also. You can check when it is available in your region. But yeah, eventually I think within next 1 or 2 years, everyone might move to the serverless options, so that you don't have to do any configurations and all. So when do you use this serverless, the SQL warehouse? Whenever you want to run the queries and all. So the analyst team can use it. If you want to explore the data, you want to see the data which is in the catalog, even the catalog, right? If you want to see the sample data, you'll need a cluster. So you'll have to provision for this. So yeah, these are the four different types of cluster. You can use it as per the use case. A general thumb rule is for your dev kind of things, you use all purpose cluster, where you are continuously running, debugging the things. Many people can use the same cluster. In production, go for workflows. When you use workflows, use job cluster so that it can start and stop as soon as it is completed. For production, you use them in the production mode. Delta live tables, if you're using that, and I would strongly say use that, because it's a very good feature which can help you to minimize a lot of development efforts. Like even if you want to implement something like SCD type 2, uh, it has out of the box features for that. DLT has those features. So if you're using DLT, you'll have to use the DLT cluster. And finally SQL warehouse for running the SQL queries. As mentioned at the start, all these servers, all these clusters comes with various options like auto scaling, selecting what kind of machine you want to use, the instance sizes, the families of the machines, like you want memory optimized, compute optimized, as well as finally the serverless options. So you can definitely go and explore this further. Based on the use cases, you should start using this. Thank you.